Hello, sixth graders. How are you today? You're listening to the voice of Mr. Gardell. Today's video is going to explain our Civil War Interactive Timeline project. But before we get started, I have a quick question for you. What has to be broken before it can be used? What has to be broken before it can be used? Of course, an egg. Just trying to make you laugh. All right, let's move on. So what we're going to focus on in this video is the directions to the interactive timeline. And why you're watching this video is because you're absent from school on Tuesday, January 18th. Hopefully you'll be back in school on Wednesday, January 19th. If not, you'll continue to complete your Civil War interactive timeline project individually. Whereas in class, your classmates are going to complete it in a small group. Okay. So first thing that we're going to do is start with the directions and make sure that we understand what to do and what to include on our timeline. So let's get started. So you're going to create a Civil War interactive timeline and present it to a small group. If you're doing it individually, you will simply just share your completed Civil War interactive timeline with Mr. Gardell. You will not be presenting it. There is a copy of the timeline found in our Tuesday, January 18th Schoology folder, and I want to pull that up for you real quick just so that you can see where it's located and what it looks like. So I'm already logged into Schoology. I'm looking at the week of January 17th through the 21st. I'm going to click on Tuesday, January 18th, click on the top where it says Civil War Interactive Timeline Project. So you're going to complete it here as well as submit it here. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to scroll down. Click on the Google slide titled Civil War Interactive Timeline Project. And here we have a blank copy of the timeline. Up at the very top, you're going to include a creative title. You choose the title, and then each of these boxes represents one event. And if you count, there are 8 total. So you are creating an interactive timeline about the Civil War and including 8 total events. Okay. Not less than 8, not greater than 8. 8 total. Let's go back to our directions. The groups, we're going to skip that part for right now. If you do come back to school on Wednesday, January 19th, you will speak with me and we will work together in finding a group for you to work with. So what must be included on the timeline? 1, first and foremost, your 8 events must be in chronological order. In other words, what happened first? What happened second, third, fourth, etc. of the 8 events you chose to represent on your Civil War interactive timeline. Think of the most important 8 events of the Civil War. Include the events leading up to the war and major events that occurred during the war, and think about the causes of the war as well as how the war concluded. So start thinking about ideas. What do I want to include on my timeline? I want to go back to Schoology for a minute and just show you something really quick in our Tuesday folder, January 18th, right here where it says let's brainstorm events to include in our timeline, your classmates during class on Tuesday, January 18th are going to come up with different events about the Civil War. In other words, we're going to brainstorm together as a class. Feel free to click on that link, add to it, and see what your classmates are including as their list of brainstorming ideas to include as events on the timeline. All right, back to the directions. Oops, I'm sorry, I went too fast. So the next of the 8 events, 2 must include an image. I'll show you an example in a few minutes. 3 of the 8 events, at least 1 must include a video, and the video can't be any longer than 4 minutes. So in other words, 4 minutes or less. Of the 8 events, you must tie in Charlie Goddard's experience either before, during, or after the war. In other words, think about what we've read and what we've learned about Charlie Goddard in our book, Soldier's Heart, and think about some of the things Charlie went through, not only before and after the war, but during the war as well. If you are in a group, you will present your timeline, as I've stated before. And if you are in a group, you must have a speaking role. In other words, every person in your group will have a speaking role. And your presentation to another small group will last anywhere between 7 and 10 total minutes. And rubrics will be used in how to grade the timeline, and we'll get to those rubrics in a moment. So again, here is your blank Google slide or timeline. Okay. Again, you're coming up with a creative title, coming up with 8 different events that occurred throughout the Civil War, and that can include before, like the causes of the Civil War. It can include how the war ended, and of course, during the war itself. And what I wanted to show you right now is an example of my start to my Civil War timeline. And as you can see, I have some images, I have some just basic information. We're used to seeing timelines where the event is something like this, where you see the month, day, and year. Okay. You have a title to it, Civil War begins, and then some information below it. But this is an interactive timeline where you're going to add links that will bring us to a video, links that will bring us to additional information about that specific event that you included in your timeline. So let's go through a few examples. So first of all, always at the very top, have either years or a specific date, month, day, and year at the top of your event. Then I have like a small little title to each of my events. And for this one, it says Causes of the Civil War. And so I'm going to simply click on this image, and what it will bring me to is a link to a video titled Causes of the Civil War. So remember, you do need to have at least one video, 4 minutes or less, within your 8 events of the Civil War Timeline Interactive Project. Down below, here is my next event. This one specifically about Dred and Harriet Scott, who were denied their freedom by the U.S. Supreme Court. What I do is have another image, this time of Dred and Harriet Scott, and I've linked it not to a video, but additional information about Dred and Harriet Scott, specifically based on the information from the video that we watched in class, as well as the information we read on Dred and Harriet Scott in our online textbook. And so I don't have my mind map 100% completed, but I just wanted you to see this is another idea you can do to add information about, in this case, Dred and Harriet Scott. Because if I simply just look at my timeline, it gives me some information, but it doesn't go into a whole lot of detail. So that's why I created a link to this mind map to add additional information about those two individuals. Next, this event is just as it is. There is no link to it. It's just basically stating this is when, April 12th of 1861, the Confederate troops attacked the Union-based Fort Sumter in South Carolina. Here is my connection to Charlie Goddard. Specifically, it's titled June of 1861, and it states Charlie Goddard enlisted in the Civil War. I'm going to click on that image. And again, this time it pulls me to something different. I don't have a mind map this time. Instead, I have information about Charlie Goddard and specifically what happened to him, not only when he enlisted in the war, but some of the battles that he was involved in, as well as what happened to him after the war had concluded. So those are 4 examples of how you can set up your Civil War interactive timeline. You obviously would need 8 in total. Again, I would encourage you to have some form of dates or years at the very top. Below that, a title, and then some basic information about that event. And again, make sure that you follow the criteria that we have set forth in this slide that explains what must be included within your interactive timeline about the Civil War. The last thing that I want to address with you is the rubric. The rubric will be based off of the following. 1, you have at least 8 events that are in chronological order. You have at least 1 event that includes a link to a video, preferably only 1 video link, and it's relevant to the Civil War time period. You have at least 2 events that include an image. Each image includes a link that tells a story, as I did with Dred and Harriet Scott. I showed you the mind map, and then I also showed you the example of Charlie Goddard. At least 1 event is relevant to Charlie Goddard. This may include an image or an artifact about Charlie. And then with the presentation itself, each person spoke during the presentation itself. Now, if you are not presenting your project, then I will take that point and add it to these events up above so that your total points equals 5 points as everybody else does or all your classmates do. Alrighty, sixth graders, good luck, have fun, be creative with your Civil War interactive timeline. Take care. If you have any questions, please feel free to Schoology message me, and have a great day. Bye now.